In one sense, this case is extremely complicated. It presents a jagged terrain over which the justices have just driven my learned friend at some length, showing the complications and difficulties which are presented by the attempt to find the true author of these works. But in another sense, I would suggest the case is very simple. There are, in fact, I would claim, only three issues to this case. The first is whether or not we can believe that Edward de Vere wrote the works traditionally ascribed to William Shakespeare under a pseudonym, under, in fact, the pseudonym William Shakespeare. Second, more simple still, is there contemporary and posthumous evidence which identifies my client, Shakespeare, the actor and theatrical entrepreneur from Stratford, as also being the playwright? Third, does Shakespeare's background, his education, the records he left behind, does it fit the author of the plays in the ways which we would expect the background, education, and so forth of an author to fit the works which he produced? To answer the first question, I'm going to argue that Edward de Vere had neither the opportunity nor the talent to write the works ascribed to Shakespeare, and that even if he had written those works, he had no motive nor any means for concealing his authorship. I will argue, in fact, that not only did he have no motive or means to assume a pseudonym, which my learned friend must assume, but that unfortunately for the Oxfordian case, he was dead before the plays were finished. This, I would claim, barring the intercession of ghostwriters, would mean that he could not, in fact, have written them. Can we believe that Edward de Vere wrote these works under a pseudonym? I would claim that right at the start this idea falls down. Why should de Vere conceal his authorship? The main Oxfordian argument, the one on which my learned friend relied, is that it was a matter of great shame to be revealed as the author of literary works.
To me, to at least raise the question whether the Queen, who did a number of things that are difficult to explain, she was a person with certain idiosyncrasies and fond of secrecy and taking different positions. Maybe we don't know what her reason was. Well, but perhaps if the monarch said, I don't want your public, the fact of your authorship known, that would be the end of it as far as what de Vere might do.
I would be the last to deny the idiosyncrasies of monarchy. However, I would claim that, first, we have no positive evidence whatsoever that this is true. Second,
and
even
also
if we
the
do assume that it is true,
of Burleigh, too. He was a man of intrigue, too, was he not?
Burleigh was indeed a man of intrigue. I think that fairly describes him. And yet, it is strange to me that given the enormous powers which were available to the Elizabethan state apparatus, if they found these plays obnoxious, they need not have stopped at ordering de Vere to conceal his name. They could have had him executed. They could have had the plays themselves
perhaps
banned.
They're happy to have the plays written and published just so long as he wasn't identified, because perhaps they wanted to use them for propaganda purposes. There might be all sorts of theoretical surmises, but do we really have to understand the motive in order to analyze the question whether it might be possible that the plays were written by someone else?
I would respond by saying that, as Justice Brennan earlier pointed out, my client is in the position of being the established candidate. Anyone who comes before us claiming that he or she has an alternative candidate, it seems to me, bears the burden of proof of presenting us with a convincing means and motive for de Vere's to conceal his authorship. And I am claiming that no such means or motive has been presented. Indeed, the ones which have been presented are internally contradictory and collapse of their own weight.
What's your view of the strength of the taboo against revealing one's identity?
I think that the taboo was of differing strengths with differing people, as is the case with most social taboos in most eras. Edward de Vere is not a man whose life reveals an extraordinary fear of social disapproval. He denies the paternity of his own son, openly lives with his mistress, is put in the tower for fathering a child by her, is reputed to be in the company of lewd persons, sells off most of his estates, has running battles in the streets. This, I would claim, is not the actions one would expect of a man deeply concerned for his good name.
Sounds like
Even
the
if we
actions
were,
of a playwright.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sounds like the conduct of a playwright.
I think the fact that we believe that now, Justice Stevens, is simply evidence that our ideas as to what constitutes a playwright have changed.